Welcome to the Undroppables and Fantasy Sports Advice Network. Welcome to Dynasty Pulse on Fantasy Sports Advice Network and the Undroppables, and on terrestrial radio 101.5 Talk in West Tennessee. This is the finest collection of knowers of ball in the industry. There's stiff competition out there, but we're stiffer. It's been a long week, but we're rejuvenized. So lock in. We're about to wild out and hammer down to get you bricked up. I am bigz. With me in the Hall of Ball Knowledge, my clowns from a different circus, Schultz, Grindberg, Coach, and Chev. What's happening, y'all?
Yeah,
Hey. What's going on?
What are we doing this week?
We are doing a lot this week, and we're going to start talking about fantasy football, really. I mean, but let's get into this right now. We're switching it up, and we're going full crossfire. Each of us are going to tackle the same set of questions, bringing our own angles, strategies, and dynasty convictions to the table. This segment is all about cutting through the noise in the real dynasty value. We're going to talk about, a couple things here. We're going to start some questions off. Usually we have our probing the expert, but this week we are no experts.
We're just going to probe each other.
We are the experts, right?
I was going to say, no experts. That's a little self-deprecating.
Real. I was like, man, this is going. We're going to probe ourselves. Like, Pulp Fiction, anyone?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're going off the rails. It's a Thursday, and we're ready to rock. Coach, how you doing tonight, man?
Man, couldn't be better. Getting some news about Ken Walker. Don't like that, but it's funny enough, on the show sheet, it is relevant and topical, so we may get to that. We will see. Maybe a little teaser for later.
All right.
What happened with Ken Walker? What is happening?
Things are going down south pretty fast, and let's talk crossfire here. We're gonna probe each other. So Schultz, I think you got something set up for Chev. You've been waiting to get Chev in the green room here. So let's get going.
This is nuts.
Chev, hello, friend.
It's not nuts.
We're in the cage. The cage tonight.
Oh wow.
All right, we'll get this started, man. Okay, Chev, my buddy. In redraft, last few years, man, 0 RB has really blown up. Extremely popular draft strategy. It kind of, bit people last year due to the huge seasons from some guys like Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry. Now, the workhorse running back is a dying breed in the NFL, and as a result of that, it's made the dudes who hold on to that role that much more valuable. Has this changed anything for you on how you're constructing dynasty rosters, whether it's in rookie drafts, startups, or play in the trade market?
Well, Schultz, Zach, if I may call you by your
You may.
reverse government name.
Schlutzy.
I think the beautiful thing about these old running backs, these old curmudgeons don't get more expensive in startups because everybody says they're old. I don't want any parts of that. I remember I was personally harmed in the Sean Alexandering. Nobody warned me that, Ezekiel Elliott was cooked. Well, actually, everybody warned you that Ezekiel Elliott was cooked. But I think that, the guy, they don't get more expensive. Like Derrick Henry, you're not having to come off of a top 48 pick for Derrick Henry in any sort of, super flex startup, start 10, 11, basic super flex. You're not having to come off of a top 60 pick for Derrick Henry. You spend up for Bijan because he's incredible. You can still kind of choose your own adventure with Saquon. Saquon moved up a few rounds. He was in the 5th or 6th round of startups last year, kind of where Christian McCaffrey's going now. And so I think you still have the option to get some of that top tier guys, some of the top tier guys that can finish at the top 5 at the position for at least a year or two. And you don't have to spend a top 36 pick on it. I think that there's tremendous value to be had there. And then there's still really good guys, even though I'm out on James Conner. Okay. I think he's gonna get hurt. I don't think that it's going to work out the way people think it's going to work out. But for the price point, you can take the shot that I'm wrong and it's not going to ruin you. And if you're a contender, you can get James Conner for cheaper. Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift. Like they're all way cheaper than they should be for the workload that they're getting, but you can only make short-term, like 1-year bets. And so you just know that that's a position that you're going to have to either acquire draft capital to get or focus the draft capital that you do have to rebuild sooner than later. But you don't have a hole in that part of your lineup. So I'm fine with it. I'm not going to change my strategy per se. I'm not going to load up on running backs in the top 36 picks because I know I can stash some of those older guys later. And if it goes wrong and my team sucks, I can sell them to contenders, but you know who your audience is and you know what in your lineup that you'll be replacing. It's easier to replace those guys than it is cornerstone wide receivers, or if you're playing in a tight end premium, placing a tight end. So long story, very long. Zachary, Andrew, Schlutzy. That's my answer.
Love it.
Hey, one note on that. As Chev called it, the older guys, those first 3 rounds are Grindberg Invitational, right? The startup. And correct me if I'm wrong. It was 12 teams. We had 34 rounds, 1.75 tight end premium.
Yes, sir.
For flex, start 12. These are the running backs that go in the first 3 rounds, and think of their age, right? Based on what Chev just said. Bijan Robinson. Oh, who picked him? Chev. Jahmyr Gibbs, Schultze. Ashton Janty, bigz. Round 2, Saquon Barkley. Well, there I am, right? Round 3, though, Travion Henderson, Breece Hall, Omarion Hampton, yours truly, Devon Achane. So of all those running backs right there, there's only one who ended up getting selected in those first 3 rounds, and that was Saquon Barkley. So to your point, there's so much value there. And if we look at the board continuing on, you'll see that age as the board goes down. We were talking pre-show, Nick Chubb, J.K. Dobbins. You just take stabs at them because they're going to get some form of opportunity. It just keeps getting cheaper. Great point.
And don't forget Aaron Jones and Jonathan Taylor.
That's the what. So I guess my question would be then, we'll transition to my question to you, Grindberg, now.
Okay.
What would you do with a guy? What are you guys doing with? And I would love for everybody to answer. Like, what would you do with a guy like Jonathan Taylor? We're talking about the proven veterans that in a startup or in any sort of roster construction, this is guaranteed points in your lineup. We talked a little bit about older running backs, and Aaron Jones came up. Jonathan Taylor, 1,400 yards in 14 games last year, 100 yards a game. He's going in his age 26 season. So you have the one side, right, where you have the guys, the older guys. We hadn't even mentioned a guy like Alvin Kamara. We mentioned Nick Chubb, who's now Joe Mixon's running mate. So how do you parse through that in a startup or in any sort of roster construction, Grindberg, when we're talking about guys like that are going to produce in 1 or 2 year windows versus making a bet on a guy like Jameson Williams or a Jordan Addison or even George Pickens this year?
Well, for me, I mean, choosing between highly productive a vet or a young and unproven player like Jameson Williams, versus like a Jonathan Taylor, like you mentioned, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, like the first thing that I'm looking at is the trajectory versus the production window. So guys like Mixon, Kamara, they have a long track record of being elite, near elite fantasy contributors. Kamara, 5 seasons, 80 plus targets, multiple top 5 finishes, and has been a red zone weapon for years. Mixon had a RB1 stretches with strong volume, particularly in the passing game. These guys, they're proven, and when they hit, they give you a massive point in weeks, but the window is shrinking. Once a back hits that 27, 28 range, their dynasty value, we know it's going off a cliff. Their production yet is still there. There's a strategy that comes in. If you're willing to make a trade for these guys immediately during their spike weeks, their value is going to uptick, right? That's when I'm going to be willing to trade one of them. But when a guy like Kamara drops a 30-point game or a Mixon posts a multi-touchdown line in prime time, that's the sell window, but you're not going to get that very often at this stage. So you're looking at guys like against Jameson Williams, we're trying to extract the value, ride the vets while they need stability. Generally, when I'm drafting in a startup league, my primary goal is to select players, especially in the early rounds, who are positioned to appreciate and value over time, or present a go-to pass up opportunity at their current ADP. So if a guy slides, like I was just in a startup, and I took a screenshot to you guys, I had Breece Hall fall to me to the 512, and that's a huge opportunity to pick a guy there, and I'm gonna pick him up when their ADP passes on. But a guy like Jameson Williams, his appeal, it lies in the long-term upside and growth potential. So if his immediate return might be limited due to learning curves, I'm looking for his opportunity and situation. This is a clear thing for me. I'm looking at a guy looking at, a change of pace, change of coaching upside here. Jameson Williams here is a guy that I'm looking at for sure. And the risk has got to be there. The reward's got to be there. And you got to identify those young players before they hit their upside. And that's a situation where I'm going to go with the Jameson Williams here over a proven veteran in this way. But it's definitely balancing the floor of the veterans and getting their ceiling, and then hitting when those younger guys hit. And Jameson Williams has got all those things hitting for him right now.
The other thing to keep in mind is how people approach dynasty startups. And a lot of people, like what Grindberg said, he's looking for people to appreciate value, but most people they have that idea they're going to appreciate in value because they are young. So just looking at our draft real quick, Jonathan Taylor went in the 4th, Derrick Henry went in the 6th, Chuba Hubbard went in the 7th, Christian McCaffrey in the 6th or in the 5th, and Josh Jacobs in the 6th, right? And then Alvin Kamara in the 7th. So what we're looking at is, if you have a draft pick in the 4th through 7th rounds, go ahead and offer people to trade up into that spot when you're on the clock, slide down that round a little bit to grab one of those older veterans, and then have them tack on a 2nd or 3rd round from a future draft, so that you are insulated and you can pick them up when they start to actually fall off the cliff. Or if you're, like Chev said, if you're in a bad situation, you have to start like shuffling them off to contenders. You still have something the following year to keep stacking those rookie running backs. And we've had guests on the show in the very recent past that have told us the soundest draft strategy with running backs is to load up on as many running backs as you can in those rookie drafts, because those are the guys that once they flash, you can ship them off. And so make those trade backs and pick up future picks.
We're hearing a lot of these guys steaming up right now too in camps, like the Brashad Smiths that, you're hearing that buzz going on right now. And, these guys are going to be able to maybe carve out a role right away. And that's what we're looking for, is these high upside later round picks. Like, you pound the late round running back, the late round quarterback, because anyone on a roster will potentially hit, because these are positions that if they get into the lineup, they're guaranteed points because they're guaranteed play. Whereas a wide receiver, tight end, they're not necessarily guaranteed, because there's got other people that are going to be competing for targets in the same position. Whereas a running back, you're getting upside, that their value already spikes. You can maybe trade them right then and there for something way more than what they were headed into. So yeah, love it.
Well, let's keep probing and pounding each other. Who's next?
Oh, well, just a note on Jonathan Taylor there. In a dynasty startup, you can accordion out and just do tier-based drafting. This is just what I'm hearing is tier-based drafting, where if you don't get those running backs on the front end, like the Gibbs and the Bijans, you can accordion out. You pay a little bit depressed in price because he's age 26, but it's just a little bit of a bump, a little bit of a dent. And you still have prime Jonathan Taylor, who's available, and you get him at the end of the tier where you're loading up at other positions early in the draft. So you're inverse of your draft room. That's something that you should be keen on. In 2021, 40 receptions for Jonathan Taylor. I contend I've been all about, you guys know how I feel about Daniel Jones. It's going to correlate with Josh Downs and Jonathan Taylor. the PPR goodness is going to be there for them. And then, of course, Tyler Warren over the middle. Absolutely. Let's pan over to as well. Jonathan Taylor, RB8 on underdog in round 2. So there's current sentiment and then there's dynasty sentiment. They can kind of inform each other a little bit there. So the expectation, the current deal, I was in a dynasty startup where I got Jonathan Taylor as that last wave of running backs because I felt like I was at other positions. I had advantage. It was Daniels. It was Kyler Murray at the quarterback position. And I saw, hey, I'm dropping off. I'm stopping off at one of my last stops for Jonathan Taylor on the way to I'm positing the question, who can be an RB1 overall or in the top 3 heading into next year? Who can return to that form? Jonathan Taylor is one of them. And then you guys mentioned it before, Breece Hall. I just got him in the 4th round in an underdog draft, wrapped around with first round Jahmyr Gibbs. So we've got a lot of opportunity. You just have to read the board. And it's funny, you want the exact advice, but not every room that we are in is exact. So yeah, that's how I feel.
You know what?
Beautiful.
Do you know where there's a room or communities happening there, Schultze? It's at the FSAN website. So why don't you run our vid?
I will.
We are here. FantasySportsAdvice.com, offering the best fantasy sports social media platform. Why join endless Discord communities or the trolls of Reddit? Fantasy Sports Advice is a community designed to help you win with 24/7 support. Go to FantasySportsAdvice.com and become a pro member for unlimited access. Again, go to FantasySportsAdvice.com today.
All right, FSAN shop. Go get your merch, cop your merch, and Fantasy Sports Advice Network. FantasySportsAdvice.com. When you get your pro membership, you qualify for jersey leagues. You're going to be playing against us guys, and if you take down the league, you take home the autographed jersey. You can only do that with a pro membership, so go ahead and get out there and do that.
Let's go. Now, bigz.
What?
Here we go, buddy. I got a
Why
question
me?
for you. Okay.
What'd I do?
Man, because you know what? It's been a while since I gave you a good probing. So tonight is the night for you and me to head out of here. Okay, bud? Now, in Dynasty, one of the biggest advantages you can have is identifying ambiguous backfields early. These crowded, uncertain situations often fly under the radar, but hitting on the right player can provide a massive long-term value and separate you from the competition. I recently watched an ambiguous backfield episode on Dynasty Points where they focus mostly on the Jaguars backfield, featuring Etienne, Tootin, and Bigsby all vying for touches. Given the uncertainty there, how do you see that backfield shaking out long-term in Dynasty formats? And are there any other lesser-known ambiguous backfields you think could produce a dark horse breakout, since hitting these backfields can early be a game changer?
I feel like the Jaguars are the ultimate ambiguous backfield right now. You have to bank on Travis Etienne being moved, and we've seen what he can do when he's fully healthy, and he is the primary focus. We've also seen what Tank Bigsby can do, and if he becomes the primary, then and there's no competition for touches, then he basically elevates from where he even was last year. And then Baishal Tootin, we know his athletic profile. We know some of the things that he was able to do in college, and if they move on from Travis Etienne and then Tank Bigsby gets hurt, then Tootin is in a perfect position to become an absolute weapon in that Jaguars offense, especially given the receivers that they are looking at right now. As far as other backfields are concerned, I think that there is some ambiguity, but it's forced ambiguity in Carolina. I think there's some forced ambiguity in LA, and I think there's some forced ambiguity, especially now in Houston and Denver. There's a lot of noise out there, and you have to be able to filter it out, and you have to be able to get the signal. We know Chuba Hubbard just signed an extension. He's the guy in Carolina. Do not worry about the fact that they have a young guy who missed last year and he's going to miss this year again. Don't worry about the fact that they drafted Trevor Etienne, and don't worry about the fact that they signed Rico Dowdle in free agency. It's going to be Chuba Hubbard, period. Same with Houston. Joe Mixon is the guy. They just went and added Nick Chubb, but Nick Chubb is a little bit older. He is a couple years removed from his surgery. He's going to get some touches, but do we really think it's going to be more than 30% behind Joe Mixon? Denver's another one. They just went and signed J.K. Dobbins. You have to believe in the talent of R.J. Harvey, right? There's a lot of mouths to feed in that backfield, but there's going to be one guy who's the primary, maybe gets 50% of the touches, and then the other guys sprinkle in. And then finally in LA, the Kyren Williams situation. They love Kyren Williams. For whatever reason, there's a huge disconnect between the fantasy space and how they perceive Kyren Williams and Sean McVay and how he perceives Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is the guy in what seems to be an ambiguous backfield, but there's not really a whole lot of ambiguity. That ambiguity is it's forced, it's contrived, it's not real.
Biggs, I got to follow up then, because there's a backfield you didn't mention, and it's one that I'm really intrigued about, and I want to get your intake on it, or maybe the panels here, and that's the Dallas Cowboys.
Whoa. We've upgraded. We're a panel. All right. Yeah, thank you.
All right, panel. I'm going to go to you, panel, and Dallas Cowboys. How do you see it shaking out? Right now, we're hearing a lot of steam about Javonte Williams right now and Miles Sanders getting some run. Are we going to go with Jaden Blue, the rookie? What's happening here? Chev, you got your hand up like you need to talk. So let's
Pat
go.
Buchanan.
Okay.
Sorry.
I need everybody to just calm down. Okay. I got the answer for you. Got the answer for the 2025 Dallas Cowboys backfield. Okay. I have searched low and high for the answer.
He's muted.
It's not going to be Cabbage Knees Javonte Williams. Is Miles Sedarian Lamb Jr. Sanders. And here's why. Okay. Javonte's cooked. That's reason number one. He wasn't good at any point, even in the 2-touchdown game in New Orleans. He looked like he was like pooting in between each stride when he ran. It just like he runs like he has to go take a dump, like he's running to go to the bathroom. Now, fast forward. Carolina's an actually functional offense for the first time in Miles Sanders' tenure in Carolina. And he gives you that week 18 performance. He looks like Miles Sanders of old. So go with me for a second as we fast forward to free agency. Miles Sanders signs for the same amount of money that Javonte Williams signed for. And we got to see him be good in his audition. He got Jerry up out of his geriatric chair, just like staring at players' meat sizes or whatever he does to in his free time. And so like he got Jerry's attention. So now he's there. I don't think that any of the running backs really have the juice. I mean, Jaden Blue does, but he fumbles the ball a lot and he's not as tough of a runner as you would like to see. So for me, Miles Sanders is the guy. I will open up the floor to anybody else to tell me why I'm wrong, but don't waste your time because I'm right.
2 words, Deuce Vaughn.
2 words, height limit.
Oh, yeah. He can't ride the ride. I forgot about that.
I mean, he's getting first team reps right now. It's not out of the realm of expectancy right now, guys. So, he's might have been rejuvenized in this Cowboys offense, and we're ready to rock. I like that. Their take there, Chev. Thanks for that. Now, who's next up on the podium for hitting up the panel?
Something.
I was just going to echo Javonte Williams. This is part of why RJ Harvey is over there in Denver. Javonte Williams had plenty of opportunity in the receiving game, but his efficiency metrics were awful. So why wouldn't the same merit apply in Dallas? So I could see that story being sold. We've got Jaden Blue, who's just capped out Woody Marks possibly. As much as I like Woody Marks, we've seen what happened with Nick Chubb going over there. It's clogging things up in that backfield for reaching max height. Somebody's going to run on touchdown efficiency, run pure.
Yep.
Hey, maybe you sprinkle
that running backfield
on Miles Sanders for most touchdowns. Certain guys I've heard on different podcasts that I like. You got Jordan Mason would qualify. Roshan Johnson. It sounds dirty, but it's applicable and possible. But none they're way dirtier than somebody like Miles Sanders. I really like that. Shy of Jordan Mason. I do like Jordan Mason this year.
Yeah,
So
Jordan
we
Mason
need to pop up
yeah.
wild cards.
Yeah.
And all they had to do, it's sad because all they had to do was draft Braylon Allen last year.
Yes.
Max.
Yes, absolutely.
Max.
Hey, while we're here, how do you guys feel about Braylon Allen this year?
Same as I felt about him last year. He's the 30%, 40% guy behind Brees.
I mean, last year it equated to, him and Isaiah. Brees Hall at the end of the day played about 72% of the snaps. I think that number is going to stay the same or go up this year.
Okay.
And it's going to be with a much better offense. So that's why Brees Hall is such an aggressive buy for me.
So I'm going to say that this is going to be the third network and the third time that I'm making this flag plant statement. Justin Fields, Brees Hall, Garrett Wilson, and Mason Taylor will all finish in the top 12 at their positions this year.
Wow.
Whoa.
Everybody's fading the Jets.
I was with you on the first three names, and then I had to careen out just as this car went off the cliff that I didn't want to go off.
Somebody got Tom's, man. Ooh, that's
Mason Taylor has been taking the tight end 1 reps in camp. Same as Tyler Warren. And there's who else are they going to throw to? Alan Lazard. It's Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor.
Arian Smith.
Corley is hurt. Arian Smith has the dropsies. We talked to Andrew Cooper, and he said you target tight ends that are going to be the second target getter.
Mason
offense,
Taylor,
and that's where
Taylor's
Mason Taylor's sitting
for sure.
now.
He's a smash for me too, for sure.
Ew.
All right. Well, Coach, are there certain profiles that you target when looking for a backup that could potentially break out? For instance, I look at the contract environment, like in Philly. Gainwell was the backup for the last couple of years. They let him walk. The Eagles didn't draft a running back, and they brought in A.J. Dillon, whose best finish has been RB23 5 years ago. He didn't play at all in 2024, neck injury. That seems to me the perfect environment to take a chance on Will Shipley, just in case anything happens with Saquon Barkley. What kind of things do you consider when you're looking to make your handcuff calls?
Oh, absolutely. You want to fill the deck with 2 or 3 backs that are going to start. For sure, they're the guy in the backfield. There's very little question on them. And then you start wanting to flip the cards over opposite backfields of other people. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Bradley Stalder, where's that line between scooping up an entire backfield, say Pollard and Spears, or going with Pollard and then grabbing somebody like Rachaad White. So I like to get a couple in the bag, and then I just go hunting for other people's backup cuffs, upside players. First, you got to grind it. All right, just grind your process. You just watch a lot of film, do a lot of grinding. But I was having a conversation with somebody. Versatility and elusiveness, quick speed, not just pass receptions. It's a oversimplicity to just look at just receptions. You have to look at how elusive somebody can be. Somebody I was talking to, they were saying Basil Tootin is just so good at just home run speed. Brashard Smith, this person brought up, because I was basically saying, I was talking about Woody Marks, and they were saying Woody Marks is overrated based on the amount of receptions he has, because he's more catch and fall down and doesn't necessarily have that elusiveness that you wanted. So then I prompted that question, well, who would be some players? And I was hoping they would say Brashard Smith. And they talked about Brashard Smith, his ability to run routes, receiver, running back. So I'm looking all over for that. Now on Underdog, which is still applicable to Dynasty, because current informs present, current informs future. If we believe in 2025, it's going to stand in reshuffle ADP for 2026. So it's kind of funny. People are catching on to redraft and Dynasty being one and the same, at least in informing each other. Round 9 through 13, there's a sweet spot. You've got the 2 of Cam Scapo and Tyrone Tracy. That's just a matter of law of large numbers. Am I running 5 and 5, 4 and 6, as far as who do I prefer? But you really can't. It's tough to delineate right now between the 2 of them. Round 4 capital, round 5 capital for each running back. Nothing really distinguishing. Going down, you've got Basil Tootin and Travis Etienne. Again, it's flatter structure. You have to take stabs on these players where there's ambiguity. With Kyron Williams, all the hype has been for Jarquez Hunter, but don't just go to bed on the fact that Blake Corum could actually be the guy. He's still chipping in, still punching in every single day. And that 1 year wear off, and it's kind of like when I ask you all about Braylon Allen, we get this shine that wears off after 1 year on these players. Last year, you would have been like, oh, all the way, Braylon Allen, Breece Hall's out of the way, league winner. I still think those things can apply for these running backs like Blake Corum, but we've gotten burned 1 year. We got burned by Jalen Wright. Another group here, there's Tajay Spears in this range. Ray Davis, somebody who's shown something. Week 4 or 5 against the Jets last year, 153 yards, and he just ran pure. He had close to 20 points in fantasy football that week. Jaden Blue pops up, ambiguous backfield. I'm going to take my stabs. Rashad White is here, RB45 on underdog. We talked about ceiling price on Kyron Williams, Bucky Irving. We've talked about the ceiling on Bucky Irving and Rashad White. It's flipped this year. So really, by process-wise, without even looking at players and how they are, I could have my own process. I could have my process line up with the talent that I have, but then apply that principle of just finding the market and the price point. And if those two marry together, boom, I've got somebody that I really like. Tajay Spears is absolutely one of those players. Chev talked about Trey Benson, another one. You're going to get opportunity, and you have that cheaper price. And this is inverse. And then I'll leave it to you guys. This is inverse of the earlier point, which is still true. Both things can be true. Where Chev is talking about in a dynasty startup, you go down the board, these older running backs, they get a little bit cheaper, but they have staying power. But it's funny, you can have these younger guys who just have some traffic in between them, in front of them, like you said, bigz, Will Shipley. And then their price is suppressed so much that you would be so wise, just like in a rookie draft, you want to light up those running backs. Well, late in startups, get those running backs and get those backup quarterbacks, because the handcuff principle applies so much to both of those positions.
Schultze.
Did I cook? Did I cook?
You cooked.
I'm not
You
gonna lie. That was captivating.
That was yeah. We have nothing to follow up other than another red shirt. Let's go, red shirt. Follow it up.
Oh, that's me, right? Yeah. Okay.
No, we got the other red shirt.
Oh yeah. Who's asking who? Coach for
He's asking me.
Yeah. All right.
Coach is asking me.
All right, Schultze. So we've talked about the concept of Blackjack split players. I know Theo Greminger always talks about that. Essentially, it's more so at the running back position, but I can kind of see it play out at QB, receiver, tight end as well. But essentially, if you had a situation like we alluded to earlier, the Jacksonville Jaguars, you've got Travis Etienne, you got Basil Tootin, of course, Tank Bigsby. One player gets traded, like Etienne, but if you have both of them on your roster, it splits off, and then you have two running backs. The same thing could happen at the quarterback position. If there's a trade for a backup, they split off. There's opportunity there. For the tight end position, I think of Michael Mayer off of Brock Bowers. We've got the Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews trade rumor. If you have both of them on your team, you could take that divergent upside. So who are some maybe not so obvious Blackjack split set of players at the running back position? I'm going to ask you, Schultze, for one at each position, but if none apply, don't force it. But maybe what are three, or maybe one at each position? Just a couple for us.
Yeah, so this is kind of like the inverse of the strategy you were just talking about, where you want to take the guy up top and then go to another team and go for the backup there. So that way you're possibly nailing both guys. Now, in this situation, you get the trade and you're hitting both dudes again. So it can be an effective strategy, and you kind of nailed the obvious ones. But yeah, I was trying to dig and find some not so obvious ones. Now, quarterback gets tricky because there's just not really much of a trade market at quarterback for the most part, especially in season. But there's one I did think of, and the contract makes it a little tougher. But how about the Seattle Seahawks, man? I know they just signed Darnold to this contract, but if things start to go south, and if it's not completely Darnold crap in the bed, I wouldn't be shocked if they want to get Milroe as reps, see what they got. And there's going to probably be a team who suffers an injury at quarterback who's going to be looking. And I think that's a sneaky one there. And regardless, I think that's a solid handcuff in general, because if Darnold gets hurt, I mean, Milrow's just going to run, and that's fantasy gold. So that's a solid handcuff on its own. And I think for a quarterback position, there is some potential there to hit on both. Now, running back is where you mentioned it. We're kind of making our bread on the running back position with this strategy. Jags is the obvious one, like you mentioned. Bills are a contender. I mean, we've got the James Cook stuff going down, and you mentioned Ray Davis being pretty solid in some of his time. But how about the Saints, man? If this goes really south on the Saints, which is entirely plausible, don't be surprised if a team comes calling for Kamara, a contender. And then you could pair him up with Devin Neal or the ghost of Kendre Miller. Try either one. If Kamara gets shipped, I mean, there's going to be loads of opportunity for either of those dudes, and I'd be willing to take a shot at that. Looking at wide receiver, I got two of them here. One, I'm going to say the Packers. How about a little Matthew Golden and Christian Watson stack there? I could see the Packers moving on from Watson. They drafted another speedy dude. I know their games aren't completely the same, but like they're both have the ability to take the top off the defense. Packers could be sitting here. I mean, that's pretty loaded wide receiver room. We've talked about that a lot as kind of the whack-a-mole room. And I could see them being a little tired of Christian Watson with some of the injuries and everything. And, other teams, they're going to see the speed. They're going to see some of the performances he has had. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone takes a shot there. Another one for wide receiver, the Dolphins. Let's go Tyreek Hill and Malik Washington. Tyreek Hill gets sent out the door. Huge opportunity for Malik Washington. He is going to be the number 2 behind Waddle, who will get the center attention, and I could see him taking advantage of that role. All right, tight end. Raiders is the obvious one, right? Like, Michael Mayer is so dang good. Like, he doesn't deserve to be buried. And it's not his fault that they drafted Brock Bowers. That's not an indictment on Michael Mayer. This dude is generational tight end talent, and we got to take him here. So that's the obvious one. You mentioned the Ravens. That's another solid one. How about Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland? I know Kmet's owed a lot of money, but I guess it is possible they ship him out the door. The sneaky one here, though, for me is going to be, here we go, Chev, the Tennessee Titans. We got Chigakonkwo in the last year of his deal, and they drafted Gunnar Helm. So let's go midseason. You're close to the trade deadline. What if someone comes calling on Chig and Gunnar Helm is essentially free. So that's a real sneaky one for me. Titans on the tight end position.
That's beautiful.
I like Seattle too. AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo. If Elijah Arroyo shows out the way that we know he can, then you have him. AJ Barner flashed a little bit last year, and that they want to move on from Noah Fant at some point. So one of those two guys is absolutely going to pop, especially given that what is wrong with my brain? Sam Darnold is in town, and we saw what he did with TJ Hawkinson in very, very limited time last year. So I like Seattle as well.
Hey, you just brought up a good one inadvertently. That, look, it might sound disgusting, but part of this is a disgusting exercise of turning over every rock. You have Michael Penix, who you might have acquired for a little bit of a price this offseason, but by God, second round in startups last year, I got him in at the 2-4, loved it, very happy right now. But Kirk Cousins, very depressed value. You could easily have Penix and Cousins on your rosters. What's happening today, Kirk Cousins now, he could absolutely end up on a team kind of two Schultzes. If that market hit where there's a quarterback who's hurt, hey, picking up the phone, what do you really think about Sam Darnold? Oh, man, that's pretty expensive. Oh, what can we work out over here for Kirk Cousins? Hey, maybe there's a deal there. Grindberg, you got any inspiration here? Anything that involves your Chiefs or
talk about the Chargers?
Is there a favorite one that you've heard amongst all of us discussing this?
You know what? I'm gonna veer over to what Biggs was alluding to. Is these Chargers tight end room right now that's kind of been lighting up. You're hearing a lot of coach speak from Harbaugh on Oronde Gadsden, and I'm liking everything that I'm hearing from that situation right now. He's got Will Disley ahead of him. Who else is ahead of him there?
Tyler Conklin.
Conklin is also ahead of him, who's been a proven vet. You never know, but the the pedigree, everything that is headed in Gadsden's way, I'm buying into him right now, and that could be somebody that maybe not this year, maybe next year, but the way that Harbaugh's talking about him might be even sooner than rather than later.
A quick one.
I was going to say, especially given the fact that you have a situation where he can play kind of a big slot, the way that Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer can coexist on the same in the same offense. So can Oronde Gadsden and Tyler Conklin, who's more of that traditional tight end. But I was more alluding to the wide receiver room because you have Trey Harris, Ladd McConkey, and Quentin Johnston, and all three of them are tiered in such a way that you can grab all three of them to bank on Harris's future, to bank on the fact that Quentin Johnston is entering his year 3. This is when they need to decide whether they're going to like move on from him or whatever after the 4-year contract is done. And then Ladd McConkey, we know what we have. So Justin Herbert throwing to those three guys, you're going to have one emerge, and you might have one fighting for his contract future in Quentin Johnston, who had a flash last year, 700 plus yards, 8 touchdowns to quadruple his total from his rookie season. A lot of upside in that room all over the offense.
Hey, let's get AJ Brown, Devonta Smith.
Sure.
All right. Next segment.
All right, let's get into the next segment, actually, guys, because we got to speed this along. There's a couple of bangers here that we need to talk about, and these are the Dynasty Landmines, the hidden risks in safe startup picks. So we're turning our spotlight to the Dynasty startup players who look like sure bets on paper, but could explode in your face. These safe picks come with hidden risks. And they got shaky rolls essentially. And Schulte was on quite a heater here, and he's probably going to put his head into shame after he hears what Chev and I have to say about two of his main stake players here. Chev, why don't you take it away with your number 1 Dynasty Landmine?
Now, I want to start this off, fellas. I want to start this off by saying, with all due respect, now that I've said that, I can say whatever I want about Trevor Lawrence.
There's no rules anymore.
Yeah,
because here's the deal. If Trevor Lawrence isn't it this year, like if we don't get a quarterback 1 performance for Trevor Lawrence this year, if the Jacksonville Jaguars are absolute dog water again with Travis Hunter doing TikTok dances between drills and Liam Cohen going Duval at press conferences, like this has cringe TikTok written all over it if it fails. Now, if it works, it's going to be because Trevor Lawrence has come out and been pretty much lights out, lived up to what he was billed as, lived up to his number 1 overall pick billing in a system that's been pretty quarterback friendly, with Matthew Stafford, with, previous stops, in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield doing what he did last year. So with those expectations combined with being a $200 million quarterback, being a number 1 overall pick, he's going far earlier than like in dynasty startups to what the risk is with players in his same range. And so you have to, where he's going, you almost have to assume that he's going to return you value, because everybody else that's in that range has less question marks outside of maybe Bryce Young. So, and Bryce Young gave you a good stretch, whereas Trevor Lawrence was a little bit down last year. So that's my guy. I just have some questions. I'm a little trepidatious about it. I think it should work because they do run a lot of screens, and Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter are awesome, and it should work. But if it doesn't work, then there will be signs that it just never was going to work, because Trevor Lawrence isn't he doesn't read from the book of Himothy.
Yeah. Well,
okay. I am his number 1 fan and number 1 defender. I will admit it's make it or break it this year. If he doesn't show it this year, you're right.
Yeah. What do you think, Grindberg?
Well, I'm kind of on the same page. Like, there's definitely some room for him to move up in the rankings here, like his ADP, all this stuff. It shows better. We look back 2 years ago, he had a top 7 finish as a QB. So there's some optimism here. Now he's got the best supporting weapons in his realm right now. So yeah, all signs are pointing up. But remember when Jeff Bell was on our show about a month ago, he was talking about Trevor Lawrence being compared to guys like Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning, and that's kind of unrealistic, especially with
Correct.
where he's at this stage of his career. So if we take that out and we kind of come back to terms with where he is, maybe he's a top 12 quarterback if he can really get into here. But he doesn't have that rushing upside, and we'll see what happens there. But I got
that Heat all started as a freshman in college. I mean, he was going to be the number one of his class from his freshman year, and he was running.
Yeah, there you go. So it's not happening in the NFL. So we'll see what happens. I mean, with the new coaching staff too, there's some optimism here. And for my guy here that I'm worried about in dynasty startups, and it's just based off of his price, nothing against his talent or anything, and it's Brian Thomas Jr. because he delivered one of the biggest rookie year breakouts in recent memory, finishing as the wide receiver 4 in fantasy, cementing himself as a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. But if you just look at the numbers, you might be missing some risk bubbling underneath the surface. We remember last year, a lot of us weren't even on him coming into last year. Like we were scratching our heads on how we missed on Brian Thomas Jr. He was obviously shaded behind Malik Neighbors there at LSU. But with Brian Thomas Jr., that shine of that rookie year may be masking some signs of his value already peaking, not growing. He is going in the first round, and in some dynasty startups I've seen, mostly in the second round, and that risk is just too risky for me. I think that's his peak value right now. While Thomas has the size, the speed profile, the eye-popping stats, and the context of his rookie season deserves a harder look. He posted those numbers largely with Mac Jones under center, a quarterback playing loose, taking risks, chucking the ball up to Thomas with little, to no reflect on what he's actually doing. Trevor Lawrence now healthy, playing under new head coach Liam Cohen. The passing game will likely be more structured and less distributive. More importantly, the Jags made that aggressive future-focused move to trade up for Travis Hunter, one of the most hyped prospects in NFL history, signaling their long-term wide receiver 1 intentions, with Hunter set to be used heavily on offense and only scratching the surface of his ceiling. It's not outlandish to think he could leapfrog Thomas as Jacksonville's top weapon in 2026. Thomas averaged 100 yards, 10 targets last year in his last 6 starts. And Mac Jones had 9.1 off-target rate in that span, the highest among qualifying quarterbacks. Things were just going in Thomas's favor near the end of the last year, and I think things are shifting a bit with the Travis Hunter addition and the Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence coming back into the lineup here. So with his heavy draft price, it's a lot to invest on a guy that may have hit his ceiling already when you think of what's happening around him.
Yeah, and one of the things that I asked Coach about earlier was the kind of stuff that we look at that is off the field, and including contracts, including draft capital, things like that. You said the Jaguars made a very aggressive move to jump up and get Travis Hunter. They gave up a lot on the back end to do it, a lot of future. They mortgaged quite a bit, hopped up, and gave him top 5 draft capital. Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't have that. Now, we love Brian Thomas Jr. One of the things that happened was that he wasn't asked to run certain routes at LSU, so we kind of undersold him, thinking that he was going to basically repeat that. Oh, well, he's a body catcher and he doesn't have a whole varied route tree. And then he came out and showed last year, especially given the Jacksonville environment, that he absolutely can handle that route tree, and he can do it with aplomb. But one of the other things to consider with Brian Thomas Jr. is he had, I want to say, at least 3 end zone drops balls that were on his hands and they dropped. I think he cleans that up this year. That's another 21 points to distribute over the course of however many weeks he gets himself on the field. And it might even increase there. So he's the kind of guy that there is still a little bit of a little bit of room to move up for him. But the situation, especially with Travis Hunter in the building, looks like he's right at his ceiling. Do you want to pay for his capped out value right now, or maybe look running back and kind of fall back, let somebody else deal with it?
Hypothetical. If Travis Hunter comes out and let's say he's only ever played wide receiver in college, where does he get drafted?
Probably still top 10, I think. I mean, like he's definitely up there, I would say, with his profile, what he could do. For sure. I'm in on Hunter at that stage for sure. I think he's a more talented wide receiver.
He won the Heisman over Ashton Genty, who had just an insane monster year.
And that's the thing that's the narrative that we have to be careful about, because he didn't win the Heisman for just his work at wide receiver.
That was my next sentence. Granted, a lot of that came with, he looked to be Charles Woodson at cornerback and then Heisman Award winning wide receiver on the other side. But you have to consider Colorado completely structured their offense around Travis Hunter and getting the ball into his hands, almost to the detriment of the development of Shedeur Sanders. So there is something there with Travis Hunter. He was in a bad conference, but we've seen that be negligible in the past. There is something there with him. Maybe he's a clown. Maybe he, doesn't know where his feet are right now in the NFL, and he's a little bit out of bounds. But the talent is there, period.
Our biggest concern really for him was, would he be used as a wide receiver, right? That was our biggest concern headed into the draft. And now, the writing is on the wall. I mean, he's going to be a wide receiver for the Jags. They moved up for him to be there. He's going to be the centerpiece. And I don't remember seeing a wide receiver go in the top 10 like Travis Hunter has gone. And I know that he adds that defensive state, but it's I think Travis Hunter is there, and he's
Scott
here to stay.
Fishbowl 101.
Chev.
Oh, okay. All right. We only got a couple minutes here. Okay. So
we can edit out some shenanigans.
So he was my number one wide receiver. But here's the thing. So we can't just brush aside the fact that Brian Thomas Jr. is who he is now. Like, before Travis Hunter got there, we were talking about Brian Thomas Jr. having wide receiver 1 overall potential if he takes a step forward from his already historic caliber rookie season. So you're adding something to that. I don't think you're taking anything away. This is T. Higgins with Jamar Chase. You're not taking anything away.
You're taking Mac Jones away. You're taking Mac Jones away from
my Canadian brother.
I'm just saying.
If Trevor Lawrence is worth 2 wooden nickels rubbed together
you
in
just,
an elephant's
you just
body,
downplayed Trevor Lawrence for 5 minutes in the last segment. So now you're defending Trevor Lawrence in this situation.
If he could just replicate what former first-round pick, and we know what we mean when we have to say former first-round pick. If he can just replicate what Mac Jones did in what is unquestionably a better system with a better play caller, with better weapons, being Travis Hunter, being Liam Cohen, and with Trevor Lawrence, who is, unless I'm missing something, way better than Mac Jones at American tackle football and throwing forward passes, then yeah, Brian Thomas is not going to be negatively impacted by Travis Hunter.
Look, and on the Mac Jones thing, a lot of this is because it's not a result of Mac Jones. It's a result of the development of Brian Thomas and the team going, whoa,
Oh wait,
look what we
have
got.
a guy who's incredible.
So the first half of the season when Trevor's playing, he was averaging like 4.5, 5, 6 targets, somewhere in that ballpark.
Team was injured. Like they went into that season with all their veterans.
They traded Evan Ingram. Yeah. And Christian Kirk.
Evan Ingram got injured. Like all
right, you're proving our point though. At the beginning, the wide receiver room was muddled, and then when Kirk goes down, when Ingram goes down, they have to rely on Brian Thomas, and then all of a sudden they go, "Oh my God, look at this guy!"
So now they don't have to rely on Brian Thomas with Travis Hunter there. They don't have to hyper-target him. That's insane. Like
you're making a Mac Jones argument, not a Travis Hunter argument. I am debunking the Mac Jones talk.
They were in my argument when I talked about Brian Thomas Jr. Both Mac Jones and Travis Hunter were the centerpiece of my argument.
Yes.
And I'm saying Mac Jones.
Now, let me tell you why I disagree with everything that you just said. So
how was Brian Thomas Jr. doing with Trevor Lawrence at the beginning of last year?
We can't judge him off of So how can we judge? Okay,
him on the ladder
if you only judge Rashee Rice off of the beginning of his rookie year, he would look like he's just a regular football player, like he's not good at all. But we have other information to judge him on, which would be the back half of his rookie season when he earned targets. Players that earn targets don't stop earning targets. Nico Collins got Stephon Diggs. He didn't turn into a pumpkin. He was the wide receiver 3 overall before he missed 5 weeks. He was on pace for almost 2,000 yards. So you're saying that adding something to someone who is good takes it away, like takes something away from the guy who's good. And I'm saying that adding someone who can also do something very well will not negatively impact the guy who's already really good, who's already going to command most of the target share. And it just enhances their potential to boom. Like Jamar Chase, again, has 3 of the top 5 performances, and he doesn't have a single one that's number 5 in any fantasy league in the history of ever. And he has T. Higgins. So this can work, even though it is Joe Burrow. But if you just give me 150 targets for Brian Thomas Jr., I guarantee you he's going to return you top 6 value, and it'll be closer to 1 than it is to 6.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Hey, that's what I wanted to ask. All right, wide receiver 8 on underdog. Brass tacks here. There's gridlock, right? We feel where we feel. You just said, Chev, better than wide receiver 8, preceding my question. bigz, BTJ, higher or lower than wide receiver 8? Or you can have an out and say he finishes even at 8.
I like him even at 8. You have to bank on him getting to that 150 target opportunity, and I don't know if I do right now.
Schultze, up higher or lower than wide receiver 8 finish, where he's being drafted?
I think the ballpark of 8. I think it's a really solid line right there. I think the potential is there for him to go top 5, but I still think him being 6, 7, 8 is probably the likelihood.
Grindberg.
Yeah, I think this year he's around there. Like,
will he finish higher or lower, do you think?
I think he'll finish a bit lower.
Okay.
I mean, honestly though, this is a top 10 wide receiver, okay, in Dynasty. And we're talking about Travis Hunter potentially infiltrating that. Where in the hell is Trevor Lawrence going to sustain 2 top 12 wide receivers? So are we telling me that Brian Thomas is that much better than Travis Hunter when they go on and trade up for him? I'm not seeing it, guys. So
I think that's implying that you think Travis Hunter is going to be a top 12 guy.
Yeah, I do.
And see, that's where I get off on board. I think he's going to be a great 2, like a T. Higgins, but I think Thomas is always going to be that guy.
And
draft capital says a lot to me. I don't know, and everything that I've learned from fantasy is draft capital says so much, and where he landed.
Right, but Thomas was a 27th overall pick who was somewhat of a project still. So I don't think you can just sit there and say, well, they took him in the back half of the first. Like, he proved he probably should have been a top 5-10 pick.
Yeah,
right.
Like the information that you have to go on with Brian Thomas Jr. and the historical correlations you can draw from a rookie season where he performed in the manner in which he did lead me to believe that you can't make him the Robin. Like he doesn't like those guys don't just turn into Robin.
I'm not necessarily making them each the Robin or the Batman, but I'm saying that you're drafting him in the round 1 or 2 in a startup, and I'm drafting them with guys that are going to appreciate and value. Is Brian Thomas Jr. gonna become a top 5 wide receiver?
I think he could be the overall wide receiver 1.
And I think right now we have to do that in Dynasty, especially in startups. We have to bank on both of them to see how it shakes out. If this is a Jamar Chase T. Higgins situation, we don't know who the Jamar Chase is going to be yet. And we talked months ago, and just to put a pin in this for our future Brian Thomas Jr. versus Travis Hunter entire episode, I'm gonna say this and move on a little bit. But we talked months ago, a direct question from Retzlaff: where do we have Malik Neighbors versus Brian Thomas Jr.? And I still have Malik over Brian Thomas Jr. My guy, real quick, that I want to talk about as far as being a possible landmine is Nico Collins.
I forgot that was the game that we were doing.
Landmines, okay, and that was my landmine.
So a couple years ago, when Nico Collins was entering his 3rd year, I called the Nico Collins 3rd year breakout. I benefited greatly from that, and then quickly moved on, traded my assets of Nico Collins to upgrade elsewhere. The Houston Texans have right now Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. They're going to be playing different roles. We know what Nico Collins can do, but I see Jalen Noel becoming a target focus in that offense earlier than Jaden Higgins. I love Jaden Higgins very, very much, but Nico is going to take targets away from Jaden Higgins, and Jalen Noel is going to step right into the Tank Dell slot, and he's going to be able to cook. Now, again, we know what Nico Collins can do, but there's also quite an extensive injury history. This is not a guy who deals with nagging injuries or light injuries very well. Nothing catastrophic, but it reminds me, and it reminds me of Josh Jacobs, but in the opposite. Josh Jacobs dealt with little bang-ups all the time, but kept going out there. Nico Collins seems to come off the field a little bit more than what I'm comfortable with. And where Nico Collins is being taken, there are a plethora of other guys that I would much rather invest in.
I would just say that this is kind of like the Jonathan Taylor thing, where it's worn off a little bit because bigz, those sentiments are there in dynasty startups where of those hammer wide receivers, it's the Chase, Jeffersons, Lambs, Neighbors, could be BTJ, right? Where Nico is just at that end. He's still getting respect in that tier, but people are starting to shuffle him at the back. Prior to that hamstring injury, I think it was against the Bills, he was cooking. People had Lamb and Nico Collins neck and neck, and so much has changed very quickly. I think the added competition, to your point, bigz, it's just going to make it so much that we want the rising tide for CJ Stroud, but not sure how it could put a little bit of a dent in the Nico Collins can. So I'm there. My player is Ken Walker. I love Ken Walker. I had him last year. He's a guy, to me, he's like Nick Chubb who can catch passes. But will he get the unadulterated opportunity over the long haul and stay healthy for that? Last year, played just 11 games. That was a big problem for him. And it's funny, we made this show sheet, and I was listening to FF Dynasty, Chev, and you guys talking about Ken Walker going off, and I was almost hesitant. I was almost going to go on the Bucky Irving train here, but I stayed convicted. And then, sure enough, this ankle injury comes out. My hesitancy on Ken Walker is just, hey, it's Wednesday, out for lower abdomen. Thursday, abdomen. Something going on with what his hernias, and it's just not the best thing for him. I kind of think he's like Nick Chubb, where we're never going to get the unadulterated, just Ken Walker goes ham, stays healthy, and goes off. He's going right now in round 5 on underdog to round 10s, Zach Charbonnet. I love Ken Walker's talent more, but with the price point, somebody that we're looking down the line, it's Zach Charbonnet leveraging against. In fantasy, every year there's players who we don't get what we want. And I kind of think we're just never going to get what we want from Ken Walker. And he'll be a player that we always look at. Hey, look at the efficiency metrics. Look at the stats that he was putting up on a per game basis. it's all there. I just think he's had misfortune, and I can just see that kind of continuing. And of course, with how brutal the NFL is with injuries, at a certain point, things move on. And there were even some murmurs of some rumors. Now, I want to go to Schulte. You can comment on that. And then can you tell us about Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah, man. So the Ken Walker stuff makes me sad because I love the guy too. I was super, super high on him. Just absolute home run hitter. Like that dude can score from anywhere on the field. We saw it in college. We've seen it in the pros. But it's those dang ankle injuries, man. Like they keep popping up with him, and that's an issue for a running back. So yeah, I'm with you on that. It does suck. I hate to say it. But yeah, mine's going to be some Marvin Harrison Jr. And I'm going to preface this one by saying I think he's going to still be awesome. Like I still think like I'm willing to take stabs at him at his given startup price. The talent is there. Such a technician. I don't think we got to tap into what he's got to offer as a rookie. Like I think he's going to keep growing. However, there is an entirely real possibility that this 2025 season goes pretty similar to how 2024 went. Kyler wasn't very good last year. He 68.1 catchable target rate to Marvin last year, which was 64th among wide receivers. He was 5th in unrealized air yards. Kyler just wasn't good throwing to Marv. And Trey McBride is not walking out that door. And I don't think Marv he's never going to reach that potential and that price if he's second fiddle on the team. And Kyler loves throwing to McBride. And I like, you're not going to change that about a guy, right? Like you could coach him up and say, we got to throw to Marv. We got to do this and that. But when the bullets start flying and you're scrambling or like, when you're in a rush or whatever, in a game situation, you're going to revert back to that guy you trust, the guy you've been throwing to for a couple of years, the guy you've been peppering with targets. And so McBride creates a real problem, I think, in this situation. So once again, I'm all in on Marv's talent. The ceiling is to the moon, but there is an entire real possibility he just kind of plateaus for another year or two. And where you're drafting him at, like what Grindberg's saying, you want to appreciate on the value there. And it's possible that doesn't happen with him.
I've said that he's not going to reach his ceiling until Kyler's not his quarterback. Chev, Cook.
The biggest issue with Marvin Harrison Jr. is the Kyler Murray thing and the way that they've played offense. Like I think his rookie year, he had one snap using pre-snap motion, and they're saying that they're going to do more of that this year. But then you get to like the actual problem, which is Kyler Murray's a vertically challenged quarterback, and he's never really thrown the ball over the middle of the field. And the one thing that makes Marvin Harrison so good is him being able to win on small end breakers and big end breakers over the middle of the field. And so if those balls aren't going to go in Marvin Harrison's direction because they're going to Trey McBride on like check and releases and dump offs, then you're reliant on 50-50 balls outside the numbers. Those are low percentage passes if they're traveling more than 15 yards down the field anyway. And then you're putting it into a contested catch situation, which is, at best a 50-50 proposition. So he's not getting high value targets. He disappears from the game plan inexplicably. It doesn't seem like they had a great plan in place for him. So it would require him making a Herculean leap from what we saw from him as a player, which he looked good when given opportunity, but he would have to make another leap to become a truly elite at the position to return on the type of to have the type of return on his ADP and his usage. For that to pay off, he would have to become one of the most efficient receivers, like T. Higgins, Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase level efficient to make that work.
Well, to Schulte's point, just like Omar, he coming. That's gonna do it for us tonight. We gotta cut this down, make some really hard editing choices, Mike. I do want to shout out real quick. I found somebody who rivals Chev Sanders in terms of name. naming himself. So the account is DeQuavion McGillicuddy, the artist formerly known as Marv Chungus, formerly known as Ron Mexico. As soon as I saw that account, I thought of Chev and his.
That's a Key and Peele East versus West name.
Remonitor.
That's incredible.
Everybody go ahead and like and subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. Go to fantasysportsadvice.com. You can find all of our merch at the fantasysportsadvice.com merch store. Also, you can join us as a pro member. If you're on the Undroppables, make sure that you like and subscribe, and go ahead and play some fastdraft.app. Go to Drafters and play some best ball over there. We got a lot of irons in the fire. We do a lot of cooking over here, cooking and probing. It's what we do, and everybody appreciates a little bump every once in a while. So that was something
that's a wicked. That is a wicked way to end an episode.
And we will see you next week. Summer fish. I hear rumors that there's some summer fish content coming. It's Scott Fish Bowl, you guys, and mock drafting season. So I've been trying to say, hey, it's summer fish, and Chev was like, are we doing a Scott Fish Bowl mock? So we're gonna start putting that on the docket. And other than that, we hope you win.
Hope you win. Peace.